All right, it's 9 o'clock Universal Time, so we will make a start. Whilst we're waiting for others to join, let me just give you a few housekeeping points. Please keep your microphone muted throughout this session. I also want to let you know that English and French language interpretations are available. So please choose your preferred channel by clicking on the interpretation icon, which you will see down on your screen on the Zoom platform. We also encourage you to use the chat throughout the webinar to share your experiences and comments. And we will also be interacting with you on the chat throughout the webinar. You may also submit questions at any time using the same chat platform, and we will address as many as possible during the discussion at the end of this session. And finally, I want to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are connecting. A very warm welcome to everyone. On behalf of ACI Africa, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, which is on strengthening airport emergency preparedness through effective emergency exercises. Thank you for taking the time to join us today from airports, civil aviation authorities, and other aviation-related organizations across Africa and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, emergency preparedness is, of course, one of the most critical responsibilities of any airport. Fortunately, major emergencies are rare, but when they do occur, there is no opportunity for a second rehearsal. We have to be ready. And being ready means much more than simply having an airport emergency plan in place. It means making sure that our people know what to do, that our procedures work in practice, and that all the different agencies involved can coordinate effectively and respond as one team. And that is really what today's webinar is about. We are going to look at how airports can design and conduct meaningful emergency exercises, how these exercises can help identify weaknesses before a real emergency exposes them, and importantly, how we can use the lessons learned to continuously improve our preparedness. So whether your airport regularly conducts full-scale emergency exercises or is only beginning to strengthen its emergency preparedness program, we hope that today's discussion will give you some practical ideas and useful takeaways that you can apply at your own airport. I am Ramesh Boyru, Director Strategy and Business Development at ACI Africa, and I'll have the pleasure of moderating today's webinar. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Joining us today is Mr. Peter McMahon, Managing Director of Aviation Rescue Services, and more importantly, ACI Africa's Rescue and Firefighting Services expert and trainer. Peter brings more than 25 years of experience in airport rescue and firefighting, having worked at virtually every level of the profession. Over the course of his career, he has trained more than 10,000 firefighters across more than 20 countries. He is also the co-author of the 7th edition of the International Fire Service Training Association Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting Manual, one of the leading reference publications in the field. So I think it's fair to say that Peter brings a tremendous amount of practical, hands-on experience to our discussion today. Peter, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Ramesh, and welcome everybody, no matter where you are. Greetings from Melbourne, Australia. It's evening time here, and I'm really privileged and blessed to be given this opportunity to serve African airports in this way. Many of you would know that I've been to many countries in Africa and supporting in various ways, and I've been very excited about this evening's webinar, and in particular any follow-up actions that come out of this to support and help you through this very important topic. And I know, having been to Africa on several occasions, there is a real hunger out there to get this right. And as Romesh very well articulated before, it's great to have almost, I think there's over 400 people registered for this webinar, which is testament to the hunger that you have for this very important topic. The most valuable input today really is from all of you. Even though we have so many people registered, please, you will get a say. If you don't get your questions answered during the chat, during this session, we are recording the session and we are recording all of your questions, and we will get back to you. I promise you that. Thanks, Romesh.
All right. So, Peter, let's dive straight into the fire. Well, I mean, straight into the subject. Every airport has an emergency plan, as you know. But when a real emergency happens, we often find that the biggest challenges aren't necessarily what's written on the plan. They are coordination, communication, and making the right decisions under pressure. So, Peter, why is having a well-documented emergency plan really only the starting point when it comes to being truly prepared?
Great question. And I think you'll all agree with me that I often see so many well-written AEP documents. Anybody can write something, maybe with the help, a little bit of help of AI, maybe copy something, or maybe just meet a minimum requirement and document an AEP, Airport Emergency Plan. But that might look credible on paper, but really it's not really supported by actual capability needed to put that plan into practice. I guess a good way of describing it, as I've put there in the PowerPoint presentation, is, plans describe the intent. Exercises that are planned and implemented well reveal the capability, the true capability. So an airport emergency plan provides the framework for preparedness, but it's not by itself proof that the airport is actually prepared. The document tells you what should happen, but exercising really tells you what actually happens. An exercise demonstrates whether people, systems, and agencies can actually deliver that response under pressure. Well, that's an exercise that's planned and implemented well. A documented airport emergency plan really should describe, as a minimum, describe arrangements for different types of emergencies, describe notification or call-out procedures, allocate responsibilities, roles and responsibilities of both airport agencies or airport operations and external agencies, identify facilities and resources that are available both internally and externally, establish command and control and coordination arrangements, and document expected actions in a clear and succinct way. But, the existence of those arrangements on paper, as I said, doesn't really confirm that, for example, and the common things that I see is that contact information, for instance, in an airport emergency plan is current. Often it's not current. The paper arrangements don't confirm that the contact information is current, or that personnel and staff maybe don't understand their responsibilities. It doesn't confirm that agencies interpret their responsibilities in the same way that aligns with the airport emergency plan. The required resources, are they working and actually available? The document doesn't confirm that. Communication systems, does it confirm that they're actually compatible? So interagency operations, interoperability communication systems. What about decision-making? It doesn't confirm that decision-making authority is really understood. and that agencies can operate as one coordinated response, which is often called a unified command. You know, a plan is an agreed intention. Preparedness is demonstrated performance, as I've put there. This is important. I believe, you know, the first 10 minutes of any sort of airport emergency is a critical phase. It's the phase that puts us under the most pressure. If we take into account the human factors, under stress, people will always fall back on what they've practiced, not what is written down. You know, often, I mean, let's be honest, how many of your external agencies, your stakeholders mentioned in your airport emergency plan, actually have read the airport emergency plan? Maybe they don't even have a current copy of it. A role that's never been rehearsed will be improvised on the day. That's for sure. Let me say that again. A role that has never been rehearsed will be improvised on the day, no matter how well it's documented. There's a great saying, and I don't know who came up with it, but it says, the more we sweat in practice, the less we bleed in war. You know, decision-making under pressure, the first 10 minutes will shape the outcome, the first 10 minutes of the incident. This is the critical time when things are developing rapidly. Things are so dynamic. You know, when we think about a major aircraft incident or a major airport incident, it's dynamic. It can be catastrophic. As Ramesh said, they're rare, but the consequences are very high. And in that first 10 minutes, that's when we have the most vulnerability. Emergencies involve often, you know, incomplete and sometimes contradictory information. Of course, significant time pressure for those of you that are listening that are in command positions that are going to be potentially running an incident. You know what I'm talking about. Often uncertainty about the scale and the location even of the incident. Competing priorities, competing operational priorities. That is rescuing passengers while protecting your emergency responders, competing priorities. Controlling the fire while preserving escape routes. Providing urgent medical treatment while setting up triage. Preserving the scene or protecting the evidence while undertaking firefighting and rescue operations. Obviously, a very difficult thing to do, to think about preserving the scene while you're undertaking firefighting and rescue operations. Containing runoff to protect the environment, that is wastewater or foam runoff and all of that, while you're restoring airport operations quickly and ensuring the airport is genuinely safe to be operationally ready again. All those competing priorities. Fatigue and stress come into it. Cognitive overload. It's like bullets flying in, you know, it's almost impossible to manage. Well, it is impossible to manage. We talk about span of control and how much a person can actually manage at an incident. It strains situational awareness. The fog of an emergency sets in, and therefore we have rapid changes in command. You know, this is a demanding, very demanding emergency, and a simple, a documented airport emergency plan is not enough. You really need to practice it. I've got there, you know, people may know the plan in a calm office environment, but may respond differently when information is incomplete, the scene is very confronting, and multiple agencies are requesting immediate decisions. So I think, in my opinion, is that effective response during this period, this critical period, depends on personnel understanding the airport emergency plan. How do they understand it? Do they just understand it by reading it? I don't think so. It needs to be practiced. They need their individual authority and responsibilities needs to be well understood. The limits of their role and their responsibilities. And when priority decisions must be made or escalated and waiting for complete information, you need to prioritize. So there's a lot, you know, that's riding on this, but no airport stands alone. You don't stand alone. You know, it's It's not just your rescue and firefighting service that's going to manage this. It's not just your internal airport operations that are going to manage this incident. We can't do it alone. A real airport emergency can involve those agencies that I've put there: rescue, firefighting, police, medical services, even defence forces, and many others. And each of these brings challenges as well. Each of these agencies brings its own command structure, for instance, its own operating procedures, standard operating procedures, terminology, and its own radio systems, which are often incompatible to our internal airport systems. Responses often fail when agencies don't work together in a truly unified way. AEP exercises provide a safe way, and often a very inexpensive way, to test and improve that coordination. It allows you to learn before it really happens. Accident investigations worldwide repeatedly reference coordination and communication failures, not equipment failures, not equipment shortfalls or resourcing inadequacy. And I'm sure you'll agree with me. And it's communication is it always, in many incidents, it comes back to that. It's much cheaper to fail in an exercise than to discover the gap during a real incident. And I love in one of the African airports, in the emergency operations center, I won't mention the airport, that I saw, they've got a big poster up there, and it reads something like this: if you think emergency planning is expensive, wait until you see the cost of managing a major incident without being prepared. And I'm not just talking about the financial cost. Now, I understand, and I'm wrapping up with this question, I understand that the potential resourcing constraints in some jurisdictions, in some countries, where resourcing is going to be difficult. So I guess what I'm saying is, when resources are scarce, when you don't have much in the way of resources, wasting none of them through confusion matters more, not less. So really, we should be practicing more under these resource-constrained jurisdictions than just having a nicely documented plan and maybe having an excuse that we can't really run full-scale exercises because of our resourcing constraints. There is an incident, a very quick case study, and guys and girls, you'll have these notes. I'm guessing ACI Africa are going to provide you with these presentations, or this presentation. This particular incident happened, and it kind of correlates to what I'm saying about being prepared and not just relying on your airport emergency plan document. In February 2013, in Sept-Îles Airport in Quebec in Canada, a helicopter crashed onto the runway. It was during a training flight. The helicopter was substantially damaged, and one pilot was seriously injured, and 2 occupants sustained minor injuries. Now, the incident happened on a Sunday, and it happened to be when the airport manager wasn't present. He was having his day off on the Sunday. Now, the emergency response plan that had been in place for some 13 years prior, which was regularly reviewed, identified the roles and responsibilities of each responding organisation. But it required the airport duty manager, remember, who was having a day off, to proceed directly to the Emergency Operations Centre. His role was to activate and coordinate the response, bring the agencies together, the representatives of the agencies together, manage communications, support the incident commander, and make decisions about closing or restricting airspace, etc. But he wasn't there, remember. So what actually happened is some of the responders actually had been given keys to the Emergency Operations Centre. Now, the flight service station, so there's no active air traffic control at the airport, they dialed the emergency number and the police, ambulance, and outside fire service was notified, but didn't notify airport management. Another failure. So the airport manager didn't know about the incident. Airport operations, most didn't know about the incident. Some responders didn't know that they had a key to the emergency operations centre. The EOC remained closed, and it was just a cascading of failure after that. Unfortunately, vehicles that responded from external didn't have any means of communicating to the flight service station, so no airside communications. The vehicles were unescorted onto the airside area. Responders believing that the airport had been closed, but the airport had not been closed. They drove onto the movement area, drove onto the runway, and incursion onto the runway, and almost, unfortunately, an aircraft was about to land, a Dash 8 Q400, and had to go around. So, and there's many other aspects of this incident that really could have been managed better if the airport emergency plan had been practiced and the gaps had been realised. And that's what the Civil Aviation or the Transport Authority in Canada recognised, was that the airport emergency plan had not been well practiced and had not mitigated the gaps, or they didn't realise the gaps. So I hope that's a very long-winded answer to that question, but it really doesn't just come back to your plan. You need to practice your plan. So I hope that's answered your question, Ramesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for setting the scene very well, and also that very last case study in Quebec City, I think, sums very well what you've just said. I wish to remind all participants that you can listen. We have interpretation, so you can listen to the French translation. Just click on the interpretation icon so that you will be on the French channel. That's number one. And please do send your questions in the chat box. And I also remind everyone to have their mic off. So, Peter, let's now turn to emergency exercises. Airports are required to conduct emergency exercises, and we can see in the chat some, fairly recently, July 2026, they conducted their exercise. But there's obviously a very big difference between simply ticking the regulatory box and running an exercise that genuinely tests how prepared an airport is. And I know that human nature, we tend to fall in the first, option, which is simply ticking the regulatory box. So in your experience, what distinguishes a truly effective emergency exercise from one that simply fulfills a regulatory requirement? And also, what are the essential ingredients that make an exercise really successful?
Okay, another great question. Two questions in that. So I'll answer the first question, in my opinion. A just for compliance exercise, or what I say, a good Australian word for it is a tick in the box exercise. We get the tick in the box, is designed to succeed. Those exercises will never fail. They'll always succeed. Maybe you have a generic scenario, emergency scenario, that doesn't really relate specifically to your airport. Maybe it's not a worst case plausible scenario. It's pre-announced. Everybody knows about it. Maybe it's completely choreographed, and I'm all for choreography. But when I say choreographed, the rescue and firefighting services, the firefighters are sitting in their trucks, in their PPE, with the trucks going, ready to go. Maybe they're even in the standby positions. External resources, external agencies are already at the external staging area, the rendezvous points. So you really haven't measured external response times, and maybe you haven't measured the challenges that come with the external staging areas, such as parking and coordination. So an exercise that is a tick in the box is just going to succeed. And I think we need to find weaknesses is the most important thing. Some of us, it's difficult because we already know what our weaknesses are in our airport, and we don't want to open that box. We don't want to open that can of worms, but I think we need to, we have to. So an effective exercise really is designed to find weaknesses. If an exercise finds nothing to fix, I believe the exercise is failed. The regulatory minimum is a starting point. It's not the goal. The ICAO and your national CAA regulations is the minimum. ICAO provides the requirement, which is a full-scale emergency exercise at intervals not exceeding 2 years, supported by partial, or if you like, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, modular exercises in the intervening period to address any deficiencies. There's another great document, ICAO Doc 9137, the Airport Services Manual Part 7 provides guidance on the planning and how to conduct these exercises. Meeting these requirements demonstrates compliance, but compliance does not guarantee preparedness. The purpose of an exercise really is to expose the vulnerabilities, test the assumptions that you have, and identify any weaknesses before they actually affect a real response. And as I said, they often take us out of our comfort zone. Findings should lead to a realistic, achievable actions and improvement plans. Operational procedures, everything's linked. It should improve your operational procedures. It should improve your coordination. It should improve interoperability, which is just a fancy word for all the agencies working well together under a unified command, if you like. Decision-making and overall operational capability will be enhanced. And that's what all of this is about. It's about being the best that you can be to be able to be prepared and to be able to effectively respond to the worst type of incident that probably most of us would ever, or anybody would ever have to face. And let's hope it never happens. We need to treat the regulatory requirement as a minimum benchmark, not the standard to aim for. Now, a good friend of mine in an airport in Europe came up with, this airport was a leading airport in coming up with the modular type exercise approach, which is very, very, very good. And because how many of you right now can run a full-scale exercise, can actually implement a full-scale exercise where you test everything? That is, you test the call-out procedures, the notification, right the way through the operational response, the incident command, right the way through to business continuity, reopening your airport, managing passengers, managing media. It's impossible. Unless you did it over a few days, it's not going to be possible. And it's going to dilute, if you try to cram all of that in a few hours, it will be a diluted exercise. So we all know tabletop exercises are very good. They're very low cost and can be very effective. It's really a facilitated discussion, and you can do your tabletop exercises very well. We can use immersive technology and bring everybody into the room, and it's a really great way of getting your external agencies on the same page as you and getting them to understand the airport emergency plan. Partial or modular exercises, I'm a big fan of. And if you can see the ladder there that I've generated, basically there's 10 modules that you can test over a period of time. And it might be that you test in a partial or modular exercise 3 of those areas or 3 of those steps, or maybe 4 of those steps. And then, the next time you do the next 3 or the next 4, etc. So when you facilitate an exercise, and it's a good question for the chat, do you try to cram everything into like from A to Z, everything into that one exercise. I don't think it works very well. And I've been involved in many exercises around the world where different jurisdictions, again, it's the tick in the box. And, when they really come down to maybe the passenger and family reunification sort of thing, that's when it kind of falls away. The operational response is where it kind of finishes. And then they kind of just talk about it. Maybe it's done not very well. And then the exercise kind of falls away and business continuity is even sometimes forgotten. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example of module 1, or the first rung of the ladder. I'm not going to read through all of them. I just want to read through this one. The video will play as I'm talking. So the notification system. So let's ask some questions. What I believe you should be testing when you test your notification and call-out systems. Do you have a working crash alarm? That is the crash alarm from the tower to the fire station. Are there direct lines from the tower to the fire station and vice versa, of course? How are they tested? How often are they tested? And are the results recorded? What backup systems do you have for that very important crash alarm or that very important direct line? What happens if the primary system fails? Do you have uninterruptible power supplies, etc.? Can the emergency notification and message be heard and understood in all operational areas of the fire station? Is the notification automated, or is it like managed through a single call center? Or does the notification have to be done manually? That is, does somebody somewhere, maybe in the control tower or somewhere else, have to pick up a telephone and go through the contact list that might be outdated in your airport emergency plan, and dial each number and respond each agency? How long does that take to notify all of the required agencies? As I said before, is the contact list current? And are notifications based on clear emergency category levels? That is, maybe it's a category 1 emergency, category 2, category 3, however you categorize, and does everybody know about those categories? A particular category exercise will mobilize a certain response from your external agencies, for instance. What information is provided in the first message? For example, the aircraft type, the location, the persons on board, any fuel on board, dangerous goods, access routes, etc. Who has the authority to activate the airport emergency plan? What happens if that person's unavailable, like we saw in that incident in Canada? Who raises the NOTAM? And what is the trigger for that raising of that NOTAM? How are updates communicated when the incident location or the scale or the circumstances change? So things change, wind changes, something else changes, and the external agencies are coming in. How do we communicate that change? How do you confirm that each agency has reviewed and understood and acted on that notification? How do you determine who's coming to this emergency? And does the system operate effectively after hours, during weekends, and when normal staffing may be reduced? So that's just the notification system. The other modular areas, and remember, we'll give you this, give you access to this recording. There may be more areas, but other areas is test the rendezvous point system. So that's the external staging area. Test the practical firefighting and rescue, search and rescue. Medical response, test the incident command structure, test the reception centres, test the emergency operations centre, test the crisis management procedures. That is, as it goes out, maybe into your city, and maybe you have some other jurisdictional, overarching jurisdictional requirements there. Test overall communications, test overall interoperability, how different agencies work together, and test business continuity and recovery. So that's pretty much the modular concept. I think, and this is the last slide before I'll hand over to you there, Romesh. I think the effective ingredients really for, whoops, I'll go back. Sorry about that. The effective ingredients for an emergency exercise is a detailed emergency plan. It starts with a plan, and that's what it is, containing clear objectives, a contact list that's regularly updated through a change management system to make sure that the contacts are updated, a realistic scenario, a defined scope and agency responsibilities, agreed command and communications arrangements, safety management, in particular when you're running exercises, a risk assessment to make sure that everything is covered that could happen during the exercise, and exercise contingency arrangements. The emergency scenario really should be grounded on your airport's operational landscape. That's the risk profile at your airport. Aircraft type, hazards, the geography, the topography of the airport. Do you have movements, aircraft movements over water, sea rescue, or other difficult terrain, such as sand dunes and other areas that you need to take into account when you're planning exercises and contingencies? And when was the last time you exercised the risk? You need to test what you can realistically achieve. As I said before, if you try to test everything, you will fail. I'm sorry, but you will fail. Unless you're going to do the exercise over 2 to 3 days, probably 3 days, and I don't think your stakeholders are going to want to come back for 3 days. It's hard enough to get stakeholders involved, that is external agencies involved as it is, in my experience anyway. It might be different for some of you. So we need to test 2, 3, or maybe 4 clear measurable objectives, not 10. The injects that force decisions. An inject is just something during the exercise that forces change and forces the command team and, following on, the responders to make decisions based on a dynamic risk assessment. So injects that can force decisions and test potential weaknesses or pinch points rather than just narrate the event. I think one of the most important things or ingredients for an effective AEP exercise is effective stakeholder pre-exercise consultation. Many of the exercises that I arrange, I always try to arrange a workshop the day before or at some point, maybe the week before the actual exercise, and invite people in, put some food on. People love to be fed and they'll always come in for free food. But what I'm saying is have a workshop and talk through the AEP and make sure, I think most of your stakeholders, most of your external agencies are probably fearful of running the exercise or being involved in the exercise, are fearful because they don't want to be showing up. They don't want to have egg on their face. They want to look good during the exercise in front of everybody else. So a workshop actually gives them the chance to understand the scenario and understand that this is not a test of their own capability. It's a test of everybody coming together. It's the test of the plan. Trained evaluators is also another important thing, making sure that everything that happens during the exercise is observed by trained evaluators. And I would recommend having an evaluation checklist for each agency and having somebody observing and evaluating each agency against a predetermined set of criteria. Effective planning is what it really comes down to. And look, if you want more realism, as I've got there, maybe you can go the extra mile and use actors as passengers. Often we'll use school groups and high school children come in and they love that sort of thing. Things like casualty condition cards, disused aircraft are great for props or a bus, shipping containers, fire trays, artificial smoke machines. All of those sorts of things are very good to make some more realism during your exercise. So I think that's pretty much answered your question. I think plan the exercise well, and the buy-in from your stakeholders, in my experience, is very, very important. And I believe the pre-exercise workshop is always a good way of getting some buy-in from your stakeholders. I hope that answers your question, Ramesh.
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Peter. In fact, this last slide is quite revealing in terms of the different ingredients required. I really like because it summarizes very well, what the recipe for success for an emergency exercise. So, Peter, you work with airports around the world and have seen firsthand what happens when emergency plans are actually put to test. So from your experience, what are some of the most common weaknesses that emergency exercises tend to reveal? And also, more importantly, what can airports do to address those gaps and thus strengthen their preparedness?
Yeah, look, I think the weaknesses are actually common through a lot of the exercises I see, and I've already alluded to some of those challenges. We'll say probably a better word is challenges. I guess communication. Communication is always the key, and probably disjointed initial notification. So that initial notification process. Remember that first 10 minutes, and certainly that initial notification is very, very important. Typically, overloaded radio channels. People get very excited. And if you only have one operational radio channel, for instance, for your rescue and firefighting service and for your airport operations, or if there's some sort of commonality in your radio systems, that can very quickly become overloaded if you don't have separate operational channels. Incompatible frequencies is another one. And often I know here in Australia, many times the airport fire services can't speak to the municipal or the city fire services because they're on a totally different frequency, different radio system, as is the police, as is the ambulance service. That's always a challenge. Procedural differences is another thing. Of course, each agency has their own standard operating procedures, their own ways of doing things. They're always going to have their own way of doing things. So that's always comes up as a challenge. In particular around, I think, incident command and control. For instance, who takes ownership or who takes command of the incident at certain points or certain triggers within the incident is always a challenge. Jargon and acronyms used, particularly over the radio. Different agencies might have different ways of getting a message across. I think there's a lot of things there to consider. I've got some fixes there that I've written in there. A communications plan it always should be embedded in your airport emergency plan. Maybe it could be in the addendum. A communications plan that describes how communications are going to be structured, who's on what channel, all of those sorts of things that I won't get too deep into that. Procedural AEP familiarization is another thing. So having workshops or sessions with your external stakeholders. I know some airports have had success in putting their airport emergency plan online in an online or an e-learning type course and make it accessible to their external agencies. And I think that's a great idea. It's not just a document now, it's something that can be read online and maybe in a course type of format. And that tends to work quite well, particularly for the external agencies. have a common terminology, have compatible radio systems, or at least have the ability to be able to talk to each other in some way. Linked radios is a very good, and with modern technology, we can do this now, of course. Incident command is another one. Uncertainty, as I said, who's in command and when that command should be transferred. Another one within that incident command element is that I often see, for instance, a police officer coming to take over control at some point, and that police officer is a junior police officer, or he or she is completely out of their depth. And, the expectation is that, okay, now the incident's yours. What do you want us to do? And it doesn't happen like that under a unified command system. So once again, I think the fix for that is, have a single agreed command structure within your AEP that's practiced, unified command, shared objectives. Everyone must know the objectives, and each agency, of course, still maintains control of their own people. And of course, visual identification, such as tabards or vests, identification of the command team is very important as well. Another one is multi-agency coordination. Often we have agencies working within their own realm or within silos. That's common. And of course, unfamiliar with airside access and the rules around airside access. So escorting onto airside becomes very important. Responders feel frustrated when they're delayed at the security gate. Why can't we just drive in? And I know some of your airports, while we just drive in, that's okay because the airport will be closed. Okay, that's fine, but I still think escorting is important. You don't want all of your resources hitting the hot zone, the operational scene, all at once, because it's going to be a mess, and the on-scene commander will not be able to handle that in one go. Media handling, resource deployment is another one there. No designated staging areas. Maybe you have a primary staging area, but for some reason that staging area is unavailable. Do you have a backup or a secondary staging or rendezvous point? Does everybody know where it is? How do you communicate this? What security staff or who is going to respond to those gates? Who is going to manage those resources? Who is going to tell the forward command post or somebody up the command chain that you have these resources available at the gate? We have 5 ambulances or whatever it's going to be. Who is going to maintain records of who is actually at the gate, ready to come in, etc. Media handling is another one. If you think that, we all know today's technology. I've got my phone here, and I can live stream like we are right now around the world on Facebook and Instagram and all of those sorts of things. So passengers are going to be live streaming this incident, and it's going to be broadcast around the world very, very quickly. And the media is going to want to have some answers, and the family, of course, are going to want to have answers within minutes. So who is going to manage that on your airport's behalf? Family assistance is a very common one that's neglected in exercises, at least. So telephone handling inquiry, and I've been to a few major incidents myself, and the switchboards will be overloaded. People will be trying to ring into the airlines, to the airport operations. You will be absolutely overloaded in a worst case scenario with telephone inquiry. So that's another one there. Of course, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but separating the crew from the passengers, getting chaplains in, counsellors, and all sorts of other things that are all part of that family assistance. You can see their decision-making, delayed decisions or delayed declarations and escalations, always is going to cause difficulty and challenges and have run-on or follow-on effects. And documentation is another one. When do we have time to write all of this down? How do we log all of this? Is the radios recorded? Is everything recorded, or do I have to get a scribe, that is somebody to document all of this? But we need to document, we need to record. And there's ways. The fix there is making sure that your radio systems have automatic recording, and that you nominate people that are recording this. It could be your watchroom operators at your fire station. It could be somebody else in airport operations, or it could be somebody on the ground standing next to the incident controller, actually writing things down. So I think, they're the kind of the 8 challenges, the main challenges that I've analysed, I suppose, through running many of these types of incidents. Thanks, Ramesh.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'm mindful of the time, so I ask the indulgence of the audience if we go slightly over the 1 hour mark. So, Peter, once the exercise is over, and of course, this is when the real works begin. So how can airports make sure that the findings from an exercise actually lead to meaningful changes in their emergency preparedness, rather than simply becoming another report sitting, as we all know, on the shelf and catching dust?
Yeah, excuse me. Again, a great question. As I've got there, the report is not the product. It's not. Let me say, change behaviour is the product, is what we're aiming for. An exercise that produces a report and nothing else has consumed a lot of resources, but really improved nothing, or improved very little. Okay, I think a hot debrief. So a debrief immediately following the exercise, and the hot debrief would include things like making sure everybody is safe and well, nobody's injured themselves, that we return to normal airport operations, any FOD is cleaned up, the area is cleaned up, etc. But generally, a hot debrief is done pretty quickly. And it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes maximum, and it's just reviewing everything while everything's fresh in everyone's head. And the basic questions are: what was the incident? So what happened? What did we respond to? What worked well, and what needs to be improved? Is that kind of structure. An after-action report would come later, generally issued within 2 to 4 weeks after the exercise, and its findings by agency, by function, includes strengths and the challenges that you had. Typically, it's difficult to get an after-action report from an external agency. That's a challenge in itself. But I think if there's some sort of collaboration afterwards, then that could be documented even through some sort of a workshop, or a post-exercise debrief, or a more formal debrief. A corrective action plan should be done. Each agency should look after their own, but as for airport operations, you should have a corrective action plan. And I think a very important thing there is the ownership of the plan rests with the senior management team. It could be the CEO, with his or her accountability as safety, overarching safety. So it's got to be tracked at that level, and at airport safety and committee level until its closure. And of course, close the loop. Any findings should be pushed back into the AEP, into the redevelopment of the AEP, in the improvement. And then obviously an improved or a redeveloped airport emergency plan should be processed and implemented through a change management system, and then sent out to the appropriate agencies, etc. I would always send it out in draft format first to each agency to get their comments and their buy-in, and then obviously then implement it after that. So I hope that answers your question, Ramesh.
Yes, sure, Peter. So let's now think about airports that may be at different stage of preparedness. So, for instance, some may never have conducted a structured emergency exercise, whilst others may not have done one for several years. So, specifically speaking to those airports, where should they start, and what would be the first practical steps to get an emergency exercise program up and running?
Okay, well, as I've got there, start now. Don't start when there's pressure from your regulator. Don't start when they've got an audit finding on you, or for goodness sake, don't start after you've just had a major incident. Oh, we better have an exercise. It's too late. Start now. And to be honest, they're kind of fun. I enjoy this stuff. And I'm sure you can find some people delegated that would find this very rewarding. So start small and cheap. I know resource constraints, financial constraints, and all the rest of it. But as I said right up front, that a tabletop exercise is a very inexpensive way of setting the foundation for your further exercises. Don't feel that you have to do a full-scale exercise that tests everything. It's impossible. Please don't do that. It'll be diminished and watered down. Take on that modular exercise approach. You can even do other things. A no-notice call-out and communications drill, certainly with your rescue and firefighting team. They should be conducting these type of things. Even, of course, they do their response time tests. Typically, that's done every month. That is the ICAO response time test for RFFS. And they can also do something called a response preparedness test to test how quickly they can get into their PPE and mount their trucks. Build progressively, as I said. Start with the tabletop and work your way up. Engage your stakeholders, very important, and engage them early. As I said, the workshop idea is a great one that I've used many, many times. Stakeholders want to be engaged because they don't want to be thrown in the deep end on the day. And of course, that most of the time they're going to fail because they haven't read the airport emergency plan. There's been no pre-engagement, so that's going to be very important. Consider additional joint training exercises. I know when I was a firefighter on shift, we would always, not always, many times we'd have, the ambulance service come in and we do a medical drill, or we'd get the external fire services come in. We'd do a drill with them and then have a barbecue or something. That's just what we do in Australia. We have barbecues. So maybe you could do something like that. I think it'd be very good. And the management commitment, very important. This has got to be driven from the top. Airport management, your senior management team, they know that safety is their number one accountability, number one. And this is right at the heart of safety. Thanks, Ramesh.
Well, thank you, Peter. As we reach towards the end of this webinar, I have one final question before we turn to our audience for a few questions. And there are a few questions in the chat. We've discussed a lot about good practices today and how do we put them into practice. And this often requires specialist expertise. Particularly when it comes to planning, facilitating, and evaluating emergency exercises. So, as we've been working together on an initiative, so can you tell us how ACI Africa is helping airports to strengthen their emergency preparedness? And perhaps you could briefly also talk about SIM Assist program and explain how it can support airports in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ramesh. And I did talk about SIM Assist in Luanda in Angola a few weeks ago, a few months ago now, I guess. Yep. And this program is a world first. ACI is a global organization, and ACI Africa have introduced this program, or is now in the process of introducing, and it's designed to support African airports in everything that I was just talking about. I am really thrilled to be involved in this initiative because this is all about support. This is all about helping you, giving you a leg up, and elevating you to be able to then start you off and then send you off on the right trajectory to making sure that you can achieve what I was just talking about. So under the ACI strategic plan, ACI Africa strategic plan of 2026 to 2028, we are building ourselves into a knowledge and solutions hub. And ACI Africa, is my understanding, is moving more toward a hands-on approach, a practical assistance, but also keeping, of course, all of the other guidance documents and building on that as well. And I think this comes out of, ACI has listened to its members. ACI Africa has listened to its members. And consistently, the message that they've heard is that the hardest part of exercising is not the willingness to do it. It's kind of like seen as a specialist field or a specialist design, hard to facilitate. There's a lot of brick walls, there's a lot of barriers, such as getting stakeholders involved and all of those sorts of things. So SimAssist is designed to assist African airports. What it is it's an end-to-end support program covering everything that we've discussed today. It's getting experts in to review your airport emergency plan, no matter how good it is or how underdone it is. We'll do a needs assessment, facilitated planning, documentation design or planning of an exercise, whether it's tabletop, partial exercise. We'll do design all of the documents, including an exercise plan, exercise scenario, all of the risk profiles, including risk assessment, stakeholder liaison and coordination, and evaluate a checklist and all of those sorts of things. And that'll be done against ICAO requirements, Annex 14 requirements. The facilitation, so that's the planning. And ACI Africa is also sending experts in to facilitate your exercise. So that is either as an exercise director or come in and run your workshops or whatever it might be. And of course, all of this could be training your local staff as well. So from A to Z, after the exercise, after action reviews, corrective action plans, and the follow-up that's important. So ACI Africa won't just give you a corrective action plan or a findings and recommendations report. Very importantly, it's the follow-up and the support and assistance that might take several months or even longer to do that. And of course, all of the outputs feed directly into your aerodrome certification evidence, which is very important. And I mean, certification's one thing. Operational readiness is my thing. And it should be all of our thing. This is all about operational readiness. As a firefighter, it was always drummed into us. The purpose of the rescue and firefighting service is, and ICAO says it perfectly, to save lives. It's as simple as that. And this whole program, SimAssist, is designed to enhance your operational preparedness. So I really hope that, everyone listening will take this up. It doesn't have to be the end-to-end. It could be, different parts of SimAssist, but it is a wonderful support program. It's a world first, and I'm really excited to be involved and really looking forward to supporting African airports as I have done previously. Thanks, Ramesh.
Thank you, Peter. And if anyone wants more information on the SimAssist, please do reach out to myself, to Peter, or to Banner from the ACI Africa team. Let's move, in the interest of time, to questions. I have a few questions, but I'll I'll take one, a very simple one, Peter. Should we always keep the scenario of an exercise a secret? That's from Alexander Gay Riseb.
Yeah, good question. That's an opinion. My opinion is no. I don't feel there's any advantage of keeping it a secret. I'm all for testing your firefighters in a response. So that is to have air traffic control or somebody activate an alarm, and it might be the crash alarm, it might be some other alarm, while the firefighters are doing something like eating their lunch or in the shower or maybe asleep in bed or whatever they're doing, because they're at the pointy end of this. But I think that it's up to you. But I personally think that let's not scare our external agencies away. Let's help them understand the types of things that can happen and get buy-in. So my opinion is don't keep it a secret. I don't think there's any harm in people kind of thinking through what their role is going to be during a particular scenario.
Yep. Thank you, Peter. There's another question from Nanjay Gauda. The question is, who should conduct and prepare and manage an emergency response, a full-scale emergency response exercise? Is it the RFFS department or a separate department within the airport?
Yeah, that's another great questions. Well, you really should have an airport emergency planning committee. And that committee is a group of people that are selected from your different departments within the airport. I probably wouldn't have external stakeholders on that committee. You could, but you might be asking a bit much of them. So it's an in-house thing. So you would have somebody probably from senior management, certainly somebody, and it could be multiple people from the rescue and firefighting service, such as the chief fire officer, certainly airport operations, security, maybe refueling, et cetera, ATC. So start with that. The airport emergency plan should identify that you have an airport planning, emergency planning committee, and the committee names should be there, and their roles and responsibilities, and their terms of reference. That is how often they meet and what their, as I said, what their roles and responsibilities are. So it's typically the airport emergency planning committee that will plan the exercise. And inevitably, yes, it falls onto one or two people's shoulders. That's okay, but it needs to be driven from committee level, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Another question from Amit Raj. Who would be the appropriate, person to be designated as incident commander during emergency response, crisis management phases, and business continuity phase? So that's a
Sure, that's a good question. Depends on the jurisdiction, and in the US they have an overarching incident management system called NIMS. In Australia we have one called AIMS. In the UK they have another one, etc. And in some of your countries maybe you have, or maybe you don't have, a national incident management system. Under that, or overarching that, in Australia, we have legislation in each state and territory that stipulates who is going to take command and at what phase. So that's actually legislated here in Australia. Now, typically, the fire services commander, or we'll say a chief fire officer. So let's say the incident is an aircraft fire. Aircraft lands on the runway and catches fire. Okay, so airport emergency plan is initiated. The ARFs, or the RFFS, respond within 3 minutes, and the incident scene, the hot zone is set up. You have an incident command team that is looking after the firefighting and rescue operations. Typically, what would also happen simultaneously is that somebody would set up a forward command post, an area near the incident site that probably has some visibility over the incident. And this would typically be somebody that would be now taking the incident control. They're not there telling firefighters where to put their hoses and all the rest of it. They're back and they're starting to coordinate the external agencies that are going to be coming in. And typically, the ambulance service, the medical commanders, the police, maybe military, if you're at a defense base, the senior people will be coming in at command level to this forward command post. And that would be should be established pretty quickly. Then, the EOC kind of falls in later, and it's not all going to happen at once. So typically the chief fire officer or a senior fire officer is the incident controller until such stage in my country as the senior police officer arrives, and the police officer then assumes incident control, but it doesn't mean he or she completely owns the incident. It just means that they're managing typically the overarching logistics and planning and so forth. The operational firefighter or chief fire officer will still be in a significant leadership role. And then look, there might be another transition to somebody else, but typically that's what would happen. But I would encourage the person that asked that question to just first check whether you have a national incident management system, whether you have legislation that covers this, and then just have a look at your own operational procedures in relation to that.
Thank you, Peter. And I would also like to thank Mr. Tulu Meki, who also responded to Amit Raj's question along the same lines. So thanks for that. So there's interaction between the audience. Two last questions that we'll take, if you bear with us, Peter. Sali Mohammed, how can we effectively translate? He's talking about the change behavior, that is, in terms of emergency response, into measurable data or key performance indicators to ensure that audits are tracking actual operational readiness rather than just administrative closures, that is, closing the gaps.
Yeah, another good question. And I think it's just about being realistic, in terms of what goes into your reporting and your outcomes, into your after-action reviews. So, what are the objectives? And it's setting the objectives of the exercise right up front so everybody understands the objectives. For example, the objective might be that AFS, or that the notification, the crash alarm, reaches the rescue and firefighting, because they're going to be the first responders. And then further to that the notification system goes out to all of the key agencies. They're received and acknowledged. That might be KPI 1. KPI 2 might be that the RFFS respond within 3 minutes, preferably 2 minutes, to this incident site and begin deploying their firefighting agent. There might be some other KPIs related to the RFFS, that the first responding agencies come to the rendezvous point within X amount of time. And those time measures should be taken. If you think you're going to get your external agencies responding in 5 minutes, we might get you to check whether you're living on another planet, because that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So let's be realistic about these KPIs, and then measure those, measure your actual performance against those KPIs. And I think the best way I can answer that question is to have robust and comprehensive evaluator checklists. So all of your measurables for each agency are captured on the evaluator checklists, and that will give you a really good sense of whether you've met your objectives or not. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. There are so many interesting questions, and I have to take this one, which is from Rejoice, and from Victoria Falls International Airport. So, how do you come up with a critic committee.
How do you come up with a
critic, that is in the aftermath for the debrief and so on. The critics,
critique committee?
critique
Okay.
committee.
How do you come up with it? Is that the question?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, Peter.
All right, good question. And a beautiful name, Rejoice.
Yes.
Wow, what a great name. Africans have the best names, I reckon. Okay, so I guess the question is, how do you select a committee that's going to critique the exercise? This is the airport's emergency plan. It's not the police services emergency plan, or it's not the ambulance services emergency plan. So I think the first thing is never try to critique an external agency's response. Never. Because if you do, and they didn't do so well, and you tell them they didn't do so well, they'll never, ever come again. And we want them to come. So I think for the external agencies, they're going to do their own thing in terms of the critique. Now, you need to have a debrief, a formal debrief. And in some ways, that formal debrief, which can be held, a few days later, maybe up to 1 week later, involving the key players. And that debrief should take a couple of hours at least. In some ways, that is a critique. A debrief is a critique. And it's important to allow each agency to do some self-analysis and to do their own critique, but the airport to have the Airport Emergency Planning Committee really should own that debrief and really should own the after-action review, or the corrective action plan, the corrective action plan, to make sure that any corrective actions are actually implemented and sent through to senior management to implement, and for the plan to be updated to reflect any needed change. So it's a good question. I think I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think there are a lot of other questions also in the chat, but in the interest of time, I think we have to conclude, Peter. And I think we need more sessions like that. And in the audience, in the chat, I've seen that the audience is asking for more webinars of that sort, and probably Asia Africa will come up with that. So, Peter, thank you very much for sharing your experience and insight with us today. You've given us some very practical takeaways, I would say, on how airports can move beyond simply having an emergency plan to actually testing and learning and continuously improving their preparedness. I would like to thank all the participants joining us today for your interest and really great engagement. A special thank you as well to our interpreter, Marwa, for making today's session accessible to both our English and French-speaking participants. And I would also like to thank my colleague Banel for all her support behind the scenes and for helping with the logistics and organization of today's webinar. So on behalf of ACI Africa, thank you once again to all of you. Thank you, Peter. You've been great as usual. And we look forward to welcoming you again to our future ACI Africa webinar. If you last word from you, Peter.
Well, the words are right there on your screen, actually. Thank you so much. I have a real heart for Africa. You know that. I say it every time. I've been to so many countries in Africa, and I jump onto SimAssist, guys. SimAssist is a program that's there to support you. Let's get it right. It's not a complex. This is not complex. This is an easy thing for you to do, and ACI Africa are right there behind you, supporting you. Thank you so much for joining. And I talk a lot. I'm sorry I talk a lot, but I hope you've got something out of this session this evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll sign off here. Until next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone. I see a lot of familiar names. Hakim, Fauzi, Prakash, Pravesh, Nishta, Amresh. Albinas.
Bye.
I'm just naming a few. Lorraine, quite some familiar names. Thank you for
I saw
joining
some
us, guys.
familiar ones as well.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
There was Sydney Tyrone also.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
really?
we couldn't take. Yeah. Unfortunately, we couldn't take all the
I
questions
saw
because
Laurie N was there from
from
Madagascar,
Seychelles,
yep. Yes,
Seychelles.
Zanzibar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rumas.
All right.
Thank you, Pete, here from Namibia, Oranjemund.
God bless you, mate. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.